Well, hello and thank you for joining me for another Alex on Tech and iTWire video. I'm joined today by Tom Bianculli. He is the Chief Technology Officer of Zebra Technologies, all the way in New York, who is here to tell us about Zebra's Customer Summit on the 10th of November, 2020. Welcome to the program.
Hey, Alex, thanks for having me.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time. Now, can you please start telling us about the types of companies and industries that worldwide that Zebra services, and then tell us a bit more about the theme of this year's conference, which is customer experience at the edge.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question, Alex. I mean, at Zebra, we are privileged to serve frontline workers, as we like to say, where work is getting done, where a package is being delivered, where a medication is being administered bedside in a healthcare facility. So when you look across the four verticals we serve, they're retail, which probably represents about 40% of our business globally, transportation and logistics, so think large public carriers, the DHLs and FedExes of the world, manufacturing, which is a large business for us as well, and then healthcare. It's our smallest business by numbers, but it's the fastest growing. And so we see a lot of opportunity in healthcare across the globe. But what they have all in common is that we empower those frontline workers with mobility, with Android devices, with barcode printing for track and trace, with visibility solutions that enable them to get their job done better. And we'll talk a little bit more about it, but over the last 15 months, we've made a number of investments in software companies that layer on top of this visibility and mobility platform to enable every one of those frontline workers to be the best they can be. And if you think about it, that's what our customers really want, right? At the end of the day, they want to be able to get the most out of the labor, which is their largest operating expense, typically in many of these environments. And millennial workers, digital natives, the new demographic of, workforce is looking for a modern experience. They're looking to be empowered. They want to interface with mobility in a modern way. And so, part and parcel of being competitive in the workforce and providing a great experience and enabling that frontline worker to be their very best is to be able to use technology to help them get their job done. So that increasingly has become really the expectation of that labor force. Yeah. And I'm sorry, the second part of your question.
I was just, we're going to talk a bit more about the conference, but the theme is customer experience at the edge. Yeah. So, we'll go into more detail in the conference in a sec, but sort of just tell us about that theme.
Yeah, sure. So this is something that we've been focused on increasingly, is really with the emphasis on the word experience, because we've always been customer first at Zebra. It's actually it's on in our hallways and in our language to really focus on customers, speak with customers, and just like we're doing at this event, really understand what their latest challenges are, and then respond and rise to the occasion. And that's how we've been able to innovate over the last 50 years and be able to deliver number one market share positions in mobile computing and RFID and scanning and printing. But so why experience? Why are we talking so much about experience now? And what I would say is there's a lot of discussion. I think we'll talk a little bit about this, about the on-demand economy. And that's one that we've all been experiencing over the last 5 years or so. If you have a need, you can make a request and in real time almost get it fulfilled. Whether that's an Uber on a street corner or it's a parcel to your front door, sometimes in hours if you live in an urban environment, that's become kind of the norm. But I think we're in the mode really now of shifting to an experiential economy, right? Where it's not just on demand, but it's the experience that our customers are expecting. Does that make sense? Meaning our customers being the retailer or the healthcare provider or the transportation company, their customers are expecting that the experience they have in one part of their life is the same experience they're going to have in another. And if I could, I'd just share a quick story about that. Is I was speaking with one of the largest public carriers in the world, actually, and it was a C-level executive at that company. And he said in the meeting, he said, who I'm really worried about? And I was very, very curious. I said, figure he was going to name a competitor. And I said, who? And he said, Starbucks. And I must say he was, pretty far ahead of me at this point because I was trying to catch up. So I said, okay, Starbucks. Well, how do you mean? So he said, well, they're setting the expectations for my industry. And And then, so I still had to probe further and say, yeah, tell me more. And, what he kind of unfolded was the mobile experience that Starbucks enabled with their customers, the conversational commerce of, I order a beverage on my phone, I pay for it on my phone. And then the only physical interaction I have with that brand is kind of the magical moment of picking up the beverage and being satisfied with it. It's not the waiting online. It's not even paying when you're in the physical store. That sort of all got de-frictioned on the mobile device. And so he then wanted to expand on the fact that if you think about a public carrier, his question was, why are we still delivering to people's address? You don't call somebody's home anymore, right? On a mobile phone, you call a person. So you don't, his point was we shouldn't be thinking about delivering to homes or addresses. We should be thinking about delivering to people. And so if the most convenient place to deliver a parcel at 3 p.m. in the afternoon is the trunk of your car, and your car is in a parking lot away from your house, then why can't that location information be shared? Why can't we have a digital conversation and create an experience that you expect based on experiences you've had in other places? And so this has given rise to a term that we've been using more and more called liquid expectations, right? The idea that an expectation in a seemingly completely different setting is setting the standard for consumers and customers in other places, much like Starbucks is doing for this carrier. So I think it's that idea of optimizing the customer experience and helping our customers rise to that occasion that's becoming, frankly, more and more challenging to do as people have expectations that are spanning, from one industry to another.
Sure. I mean, we've all had issues when couriers haven't turned up on time or they've come late or whatever it might be. And I've often remarked, why am I able to track my pizza or an Uber with such, granular detail, and I can't track a parcel that's coming to me? There is a courier company now actually in Australia that does offer that level of granularity, but I think it's something that the courier industry really needs to focus on. And I actually saw a great quote yesterday from one of the Australian Shark Tank judges who said that disruption actually is caused by people who are dissatisfied with the service they're getting. And someone comes in and figures out how to, really improve. And that's the reason for disruption. It's not because Uber came up with some fancy way of doing something. It's because they solved a customer pain point that nobody had solved before. And, fascinating little insight there and a way of encapsulating it in words.
It is, yeah.
Go on, sorry.
Oh, I was going to just build on what you were saying, because I once had somebody say to me, and again, I took a moment to think about it, but you say, wow, there's really a lot of insight in that, is that you're never really behind your competitors. You're behind your customers, right? So it's not that you've fallen behind with your competitors. What happened was you fell behind your customer's expectation, which is what you were just alluding to, and the effect of that is the competitive pressure. So yeah, this is exactly the reason behind the theme of the conference is customer experience, customer expectation. Let's get ahead of it so we can lead, and that's where we all want to be.
And I do like that liquid expectations. That's clever.
Fun concept.
So, you're going to talk about this in much greater depth at the conference. But what are some of the other 2020 custom insights and trends in the on-demand economy?
Yeah, so it'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the impact of COVID and everything that's transpired around that. It's been a challenging environment. I have to say it's been a unique opportunity for Zebra, since we serve the frontline worker, to be both thankful and to be really proud of what we create and deliver, and to work with our customers in I think entirely new ways. It's probably worth just a quick example of that. We launched in May. We launched a solution called MotionWorks Proximity. Kind of a long name, but basically what we did is we developed some software and a cloud offering that allows our mobile devices to very accurately detect the proximity to themselves. So if they're within, less than 6 feet for a certain amount of time, we can send an event up to the cloud. And then we pulled that whole solution together, the software, we validated it, got it deployed on the cloud in 6 weeks. And I got to tell you, to watch the company just run the way it did across all the different borders of the organization that needed to deliver to make that happen was really exciting. And the reason that happened, and it occurred in 6 weeks, is because we knew our frontline workers needed that capability in order to return to work and in order to do so safely. So, we are starting to see that get deployed at a number of customers, and it's just an exciting area. So that's an example of a trend that, it's an entire category that didn't exist 7 or 8 months ago and actually does now, which is kind of unbelievable. But listen, I don't think I'm going to share anything that's, beyond what's within the bounds of people's anticipation, expectation, kind of natural way of thinking about things. But areas like curbside pickup, buy online, pick up in store, automate, we've seen tremendous uptake in those sorts of solutions. Anything that's helping to drive automation has been a big area, particularly in distribution centers and warehouse. Our wearable technology, if people aren't familiar, this is wearable mobile computers and scanning technology that allows a worker to pick goods in a warehouse while they can keep their hands free and their heads up and get their job done by kind of moving the technology out of the way, but using it to be able to give them confirmation of what they're picking and give them the next picking order using the mobile computing technology. So definitely seen pickups in all of those areas. And then in the healthcare space, our whole tracking, tracing, patient ID, we have a whole set of capabilities in printing, on-demand printing, and supplies, which can be used for tracking, specimen tracking, for tracking patients, even Bluetooth-based wristbands for being able to track, at large pop-up healthcare testing facilities. So I think those are all areas that we saw as really major increases and a call to action by a number of our different customers. And then I guess also worth noting is, although a lot of this spiked because of the pandemic this year, in almost every case, I would say in 80 or 90% of the examples I gave, they are trends that were already in play that we were investing in before COVID, and now they're just getting accelerated. So for instance, the shift to online e-commerce is going to basically be accelerated by 3 years. So the amount of retail sales that are going to transact online this year, at like a site, the United States as an example, is going to be about 9%. We were 4.5% last year, and the anticipation was we weren't going to hit 9% until 2023. So that's a U.S. number, but you could shift the percentage around. But in terms of absolute, growth, we're seeing it, that doubling of movement of retail sales to online in a matter of months. And so that's driven a lot of customers to say, hey, what I thought I had 2 or 3 years to deploy, back to our conversation around customer expectation, hey, I only have months to deploy it because my customers are demanding it and expecting it. And in some cases we're doing it the best we can, and it's working, right? In other cases, there's certain retailers that are way ahead. So I think this is going to be something we're going to see kind of shake out some of the winners from some of the losers in terms of how quickly people react to the acceleration of these areas like automation and curbside and the move to online.
And one of the areas that has actually struggled to keep up a bit because of the massive surge in parcels being delivered and is logistics. I mean, the postal systems in Australia, at least, and I've heard around the world, have been struggling with this huge surge. And I mean, I often see the in postal services and with couriers, they have little devices, which are often Zebra devices that they're using to scan. So presumably that you've been helping in some regard there to cope with this massive surge, but there's a lot more that the logistics guys need to do and the postal services need to do to be able to, physically cope with such a surge in, goods and packages.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, again, whether it's the postal service or it's some of the public carriers that are delivering parcels from all these online orders, my conversations with them is that they are and still are at peak every day. So every day is a Christmas-like day or the days leading up to Christmas every single day. And so the conversation with them has kind of shifted to this sustaining that amount of volume, number one. And so leveraging technology, so you don't have every day, people doing diving catches to make operations work, right? Upgrading the technology to create some headroom in the operations by kind of streamlining picking, by streamlining the delivery, the loading of vehicles, the optimization of the loading of vehicles, the cube, the amount of cube you can fit into a trailer or into a delivery vehicle, leveraging every bit of technology from computer vision to our handheld devices. And then, of course, through the visibility capabilities like RFID, barcode, and barcode reading, to be able to give a little bit of headroom to that. So it's not every day is, operating at the absolute peak of what your capacity is, right? So I think that's started to occur now through the investment in technology. And, that certainly has helped our business out. It's helped our partners out and helped our customers out. But there's still not as much headroom there as I think, people would like. And this is where we're seeing the conversation around automation get accelerated. And the interesting thing about the automation conversation is it's not really, hey, I need to replace humans. Although a lot of the headlines would lead us to believe that. There was a study by McKinsey that said 90% of jobs can't be replaced by automation, right? Now, 50% of tasks can be replaced, but less than 10% of jobs can be replaced. So what does that mean? It means take a job like a distribution center, warehouse picker. They may walk, many kilometers per day to do that picking. Well, if the robot can do the walking and the human can do the picking, then they can work in collaboration to get the job done. And that's what we're seeing with companies like Locus and Fetch Robotics that we've invested in. And we're seeing those deployments really accelerate. So it's kind of augmenting the human workflow as opposed to replacing the human, obviously using some automation to do that. And I think now, just back to the core of your question, some of the latest discussions are, do we experience a double peak in some ways? Like, now what happens in November and December? Do if we're at peak every day now, what does December 15th look like? Is it a double peak? And we're gonna have to wait and see how that plays out. I think I don't think it'll be quite a double peak, but I do think it's going to be a 1.3, 1.4, kind of peak off of what we're experiencing now, and that's definitely going to create a stress. The one other thing, Alex, I wanted to bring up here too is the shift in modality of business through the supply chain. Now, whether it's the Postal Service or it's the public carriers, B2B is down and B2C is up, right? So there's more, delivery to consumers, which means, delivery to more endpoints. And typically it also means lower profitability, right? B2C, doesn't have the same margins for a lot of these carriers. So that's another pressure on top, deciding just because volume's up, is it the business you want to take, right? Or do you want to push that business maybe to a competitor so they lose the money instead of you? So I think that's going to seek a new level here. As we get to the run rates we're talking about in terms of costs and who bears the brunt of some of those costs, because I'm not quite sure it's sustainable margin wise the way it's being done right now. And I think you're starting to see some of that take effect.
And listening to what you were saying about all these devices, I want to ask you in a second, what are the 2020 advances? I've spoken to Zebra executives in the past and learned about new devices that you've had and marveled at your incredible 50-year history. But it's all about augmenting humans. I talk about augmented reality with glasses and goggles, sure. And you probably have that sort of thing in some instances, in some scenarios, because that technology has actually been around for a while. But you guys are all about augmenting people with hardware to help them do a better job. Yeah.
So you want to talk specifically about where that's going and some of the areas we're thinking about?
In brief, because I know you've got more questions than you've got to go on, but and also about the 2020 devices that you may have launched this year, or that you will presumably have coming next year, if you are able to share any insights into, because sometimes it's all top secret.
Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah, I'm absolutely happy to do that. We did announce a little bit earlier this year something we call Fulfillment Edge, which is as you're describing, a heads-up display kind of capability, which puts information right in front of the eye of the user. The cool thing about that is it works with our Android mobility platform, so you can actually attach it to a variant of a device like this. So this device can be mounted on your hip, and the full application platform, as well as the wireless connectivity, network connectivity, and so on, actually occurs down at this device. And then the heads-up display is able to render that to the worker. And we've built a set of software around that as well that provides a more modern-looking user experience. So we kind of translate the green screen of the back-end warehouse system into a graphical user interface that's directing the user as to what to do next and picking the environment. And of course, we couple that and pair it with wearable scanning technology. So you're really, I think you used the word, really augmenting that worker and helping them be the best they can be, and even do that in tandem with the robot, as I mentioned earlier. We are also really excited about some new devices that are coming into the retail space that allow every worker to become a connected worker. So one of the things that we've been focused on with some of our software acquisitions, we acquired a company called Reflexis in September of this year. And June of last year, we acquired another company called Profitect. They're both software as a service, mobile application providers that essentially allow for task management, prescriptive actions or insights to be mobilized to workers, workforce management, employee self-service, time and attendance is kind of the suite of what they provide, as well as some staff communications and collaboration. So the idea is that becomes, here we are back to customer experience, that becomes an experience layer that runs on top of our mobile devices. So what we're really excited to be doing is not just launching new devices, but launching a new layer of presentation experience that runs on those devices that helps those frontline workers get their job done, and do that primarily through the acquisition, where we've probably spent in that last 15 months almost $750 million US in capital to acquire these assets. So I think that's something you'll see more at the conference and be hearing from us as we get into 2021. And then let me just click down a little bit more on the device side. When I say a device for everyone, what I mean is bringing the price point down to the level that rather than just say half of the workers in a store environment or a distribution center environment and having a device, we get to a price point where everybody can have that device and have an ROI around it. And then get to back to the expectations of a thin device, an enterprise capable, an enterprise-centric device from a security, manageability, backroom management perspective, but a consumer experience. And this is something we've had our user experience team and our best engineers working on to do things like, it may sound simple, but to do things like have a removable battery that allows the device to be used immediately from one shift to the next, be able to be docked in a charging cradle without having to plug in a consumer USB cable or something of that nature. But at the same time, be just as thin as a consumer device, be as rugged as it needs to be, but be just as light as a consumer device. Have the same form factor, functionality and feature and look and feel, but embed the very latest technology from a scanning, barcode reading, and RFID perspective. So somehow our innovative engineers have managed to pack all of that into a device, frankly, that's no bigger, heavier, or more imposing than the lightest of the Android type consumer devices that are out there, but packed full of all these enterprise features that both IT departments and end users demand that they have. So we're really excited about that line of product. You'll see from us in retail, as well as a number of things we're doing in printing and RFID. So I'll save a little bit for the conference. So and our sales kickoff in January. So stay tuned for that.
Sure. And look, all of this, as you were saying, COVID has simply accelerated trends that were already in place, the things that were already happening. So, all of these technologies and everything that you've been doing, and working with robots, and which is cobots, which is something I heard about years ago. But I was talking to the Australian lead of SoftBank Robotics about their robots and cobots and how technologies and humans are working together. But all of this is obviously developed or accelerated your 2020 supply chain optimization strategies in the face of COVID.
Yes. Yeah, no doubt. That's that we've been in. And the interesting thing is, about that point is that supply chain conversations now are happening more regularly with non-traditional supply chain customers. Am I making sense to
It
everybody
makes
there? I
sense.
hope.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, meaning we're having more conversations now with retailers about supply chain than we are with transportation companies about supply chain. We're having conversations with pharmaceutical companies about distribution of, eventually what will be a vaccine and how that's going to be tracked, traced, and temperature and environmentally monitored, and what to do about that. We're having, 3PLs, third-party logistics providers that own the physical warehouses and lease them out to others, conversations with them as to how they're going to run those facilities and help optimize and streamline those facilities. So, yeah, I think the supply chain conversation, the interesting thing about supply chain is it's really not in and of itself a vertical, right? Every vertical has a supply chain. So it's become the dominant part of the conversation across every vertical, but not not a deliberate dialogue that you walk into a customer and saying, okay, your business is supply chain, let's talk about it, right? It's typically a retailer, manufacturer, a healthcare provider, or transportation company, but supply chain factors in, to every single one of those. The other thing I think is emerged as an observation, perhaps an insight, is that as companies have already, you alluded to it, Alex, right? They've been investing in many of these kinds of technologies for a while. And now they're investing even more. And I think we're getting to kind of a crescendo of each node on the supply chain is getting a digital voice, right? So, if I've got a location solution deployed inside of the cross-dock, I might know exactly where the people are in that cross-dock from a location point of view. I know exactly where the pallets are located. I know where the fork trucks are located. And then I've got that cross-dock facility connected back to the cloud. So I've got a digital avatar of everything that's happening in that cross-dock facility at every moment in time. Well, as that starts to replicate across every node on the supply chain, so not just in the cross-dock facility, but the distribution facility, the warehouse, ultimately out to the manufacturer that's making the goods, on the other end, the retailer that's selling them, each one of those nodes starts to get a digital voice. And then we have the opportunity to optimize that supply chain end to end. And this, I think, is the most progressive customers that we serve are thinking this way. Hey, let me lean into giving every node a digital voice, because I'll get if you'll forgive the expression, kind of a siloed advantage, right? But the sum of those siloed advantages over time will result in me having a competitive advantage of being able to optimize the entire network end to end. And that, if you think about it, you really want to deliver goods as fast as possible. It's not going to be good enough to just optimize any one piece. We're going to have to optimize, the whole network. So that's become, I think, an interesting area, as an insight for, at least for me, and something that we're leaning more and more into as we talk to customers about the digital transformation they're embarking on.
Yeah, well, I mean, companies have never been able to have such granularity and such visibility into every aspect. I mean, silos have traditionally kept people apart, but I mean, now that we have such connectivity and such visibility, you can have those silos, but yet still, enjoy the full benefits of, seeing things like a general would from surveying the battlefield, but then seeing things from the soldiers level, and having that is clearly changing things dramatically, and you're seeing that shift. You were just describing that shift, and also one of the things that COVID has done, just to shift gears just a tiny bit, it's also transformed conferences. Normally, your summit would be in Las Vegas or somewhere. It would be a 2-day event. It would take people 2 days to get there, or from Australia certainly. But now, even conferences are now compressed down to 3 hours. With your entire conference, including 2 streams, into that compressed period, which also, I guess, in the age of COVID, is respecting people's time.
Yes, yeah, I think we've all been adapting to different formats, and like you said, I don't think there's an aspect of our lives that probably hasn't impacted. We are trying to adopt some of the best practices around making it more dialogue based, keeping things shorter than probably we would normally do if we were live, and spreading out both the format, the types of talkers, as well as the way it's timed. So how long, do you have to kind of be zoomed into one, concept and looking to mix that up. And then I think much like we're talking about here, which is great to do, I'm noticing, customers really want to hear about, what do they need to be thinking about? What aren't they thinking about? What are others doing? How are they adapting? So we really want this to be a sharing conference, sharing different perspectives, sharing ideas. And I think that, that's something that has brought down what would normally be competitive borders, right? More and more I see retailers, sometimes ones that compete with each other, sharing how are they going to react to the way things are transpiring, because at the end of the day, they're all in the same boat in a lot of regards. So I think that'll be a dynamic. We're going to try to bring out some of the breakout sessions at the conference, and the overall format and the types of speakers we have, in addition to, like you said, the fact that it's remote and mindful of people's time and also, frankly, just attention, right? There's a lot of draws on our time these days, and getting everybody what they need to know, and forming some relationships as best we can remotely. And that's the part, at least personally, I'll speak of, that I miss the most. It's not what's happening on stage or the presentation. Well, we'll be able to hear those or watch them at our convenience or however it is. But, you and I just doing this, hey, it's informal, it's one-on-one. Let's grab a coffee at the break. I think we need to figure out how to do those things better. And we're working through it, but it's definitely an invitation to our customers to create the relationships and just reach out, much like you did here, and make ourselves available. So we hope to accomplish some of that as well.
Absolutely. And, we all miss that personal connection, and we all hope to be back, to some semblance of the way it was as soon as we can, but it depends on viruses. And just quickly to go back to supply chains, I mean, it is incredible that so many organizations are thinking of supply chains as never before. I mean, when COVID hit, 90% of the world's airline traffic ceased. All the ships were fully loaded. I mean, ships in China or India or wherever they were waiting to be fully filled before they would leave port. And that, of course, had delays. Then, of course, they get to the ports in the US or Australia or Europe, and then there's huge backlogs of these ships waiting to be unloaded. And so, of course, retailers are wondering, well, am I going to get my stock in time? I mean, we've had shortages in Australia of various consumer goods in stores, and various medicines because of all the COVID delays. And so this has put supply chains completely out of whack. And I'm not surprised to hear that you had a lot of customers wanting to talk to you to say, help us to optimize this, because nobody else is, and these delays are crazy.
Yes. Yeah. I think to add to that a little bit, I had mentioned before around the software companies we acquired, and although they deliver their value through a mobile experience and an application, the way they derive that value is through data analytics. And this is another trend I should have mentioned earlier. Customers now coming to us saying, hey, can you help us do more and more with our data? Because if you think about demand planning, demand forecasting, merchandise planning, you can't really use history to do any of that, right? I mean, this is all the historical models are kind of thrown out the window. So now it becomes, how do you leverage all the data that we have to help kind of model what the demand is going to be? And so one of the cool things that actually started with one of our engineers in one of our business units, they took the Johns Hopkins University COVID data, and we worked with one of the grocery retail chains. We overlaid the Johns Hopkins data on their geography, so where their stores are mapped to. And then we looked at, as COVID cases went up in certain regions, what SKUs were selling through in those regions. And then as we started to see similar rise in cases in other places, but before they went too far, we were able to use the data from other geographies as a proxy for what the demand would be in this other geography that was about to go through the same wave that the other one did. So it's kind of, if you think about it cerebrally a little bit, it's sort of shifting time for space, meaning rather than looking at demand over a time sequence and saying history will repeat itself. So if you sold this in March of last year, you'll probably sell the same thing in March of this year. We sort of used space geography to say, well, if we can quantify what this region is going through right now in terms of the pandemic, level of lockdown, number of cases, and so on, then we can model what the demand is going to look like when another region goes through that same situation, and kind of use that to drive the forecasting model. So, it's this kind of innovation, reaction, pivoting. That's a totally different conversation than we would normally be having with customers. But I think it's one that's not going to go away, right? Once you make that work, your brain starts, going off on, hey, what are other ways we can use the, geographical data to represent maybe what's going to happen in the future in another geography because of certain sequence of events. So it's been really exciting in that regard, of course, due to very, terrible circumstances.
Tragic circumstances.
Yeah. The innovation, excited to see the innovation rise to the occasion, I guess I would say.
Look, I mean, it's genius, in a world of information and data overload, and when we have more data than ever before, being able to sift through that data and get those sort of insights that says, okay, this region is going to need toilet paper, Tylenol, increased supplies of this, that, hand sanitizer, all these other things. And then through all the chaos, being able to ship that to that area and then see the actual customer take up and actually have happy customers that they had that stuff available. I mean, that must be very pleasing to companies to go, well, thank God we had all the information. Otherwise, we'd be having shortages and unhappy customers. I mean, those liquid expectations of not being shaped just by customer demand, but by, global pandemic viruses that are completely unpredictable, although we can certainly predict them now. And, you guys are part of the front line in making that happen and enabling customers and companies to, as you said, sort of move in ways they've never have been able to before, which is pretty amazing. Yeah. So the conference is normally you got to pay to go to Las Vegas or wherever, and normally you have to pay for conferences, but this conference is free, right?
That's right. It is. Yeah, it is. And it's another point worth making is many of the conversations I've been having with our customers, and at this conference will be the same. The first part of the conversation has been, how do we help each other navigate through, what we're all experiencing? And it's just the humanity of that, right? It's what do you need? What can we provide you? And if you need something, Zebra's here. And that started with our CEO, Anders Gustafsson, who kind of set the example there that, hey, let's get to all our customers. Let's let them know we're here for them. And these are the times in which lasting relationships are made. And at the end of the day, people buy from people, right? People do business with people. And so I think there's no more stark reminder of the humanity of business interaction than what we're dealing with right now. So yeah, it's free for a whole bunch of reasons, but that's that kind of thinking sort of plays into it, as does the idea that the actual attendance is looking to let's identify together some of these things as we're having these dialogues, and use the conference not just to communicate, but use the conference itself as a working session to innovate together for the future, and do that all around customer experience. So that's the idea, and we're really excited to do it.
Now, I've got 3 questions that I always like to finish with. And the first one is about the future. Where do you see Zebra and its technologies and customers in 2030, in a decade's time? How do you see the company and the market evolving over the next decade? And obviously, everything we've spoken about is pointing to where it's evolving. But if you think about a decade, what do you think?
Yeah, it's a big question there, Alex. Right? What I would do is I'd mention a couple of I think truths as I've spoken about them before. One is that the expectation of delivery time is approaches 0 as we kind of expand out over into time, right? And then the selection of what you anticipate being able to obtain, and whether it's a B2C or B2B, is kind of trending towards infinity. So the idea that I can have infinite selection of service and product delivered to me in 0 time. And then if you kind of play, this is we've actually used this type of exercise to even brainstorm internally, right? If you play that dynamic out, what actually happens? And I think one of the things that happens is the lines really blur. So when we talk about these vertical markets, as we do today, and serving those vertical markets, I don't know that they really exist the way that we talk about them today. When we talk about a supply chain, and that supply chain, the very notion of the word chain denotes this linked linear thing. That it's no longer a chain, but it's a pervasive network. And then the pervasive nodes on that network also get decentralized, because the only way to deliver infinite selection in zero time is if I can produce and deliver closer and closer to the destination at which it needs to be consumed. Because by 2030, I don't think we're going to have teleportation yet. So,
No.
so maybe that's the year 3000 answer. But by 2030, it's going to really be about pushing not just micro fulfillment centers down to a more local place, a more granular, smaller type fulfillment center. But it's also going to be about starting to ingest elements of manufacturing capabilities into that as well. So the distribution of manufacturing closer to the edge, the distribution of actually fulfillment closer to the edge and to our homes. And then you start to bring in the whole notion of and the focus on sustainability. And what does that look like in terms of carbon footprint and recyclability and reverse logistics? And so I really do think we're going to see this transformation of those two drivers, infinite selection delivered in zero time. And the biggest part of that transformation is going to be the supply chain, because getting those raw materials, getting the finished goods out to the last mile, the raw materials down to the places where they need to be from a manufacturing point of view, is what it's going to be all about, and doing that with a lower and lower carbon footprint. So, the only way to kind of get there is to continue down these paths, right? More and more automation, more and more predictability and prescription about what needs to be done. And then, I think advancements, particularly in the manufacturing space. I know people have been talking about 3D printing for a really long time. I think this, another decade plus time frame that starts to ripen and become, I think, even more pervasive and help deliver on some of the things we're talking about here. So kind of exciting and maybe not as recognizable 10 years from now, at least in terms of speaking about specific vertical markets as it is today. So we'll see how that all plays out, but really, really great speaking with you, Alex, and happy to take the opportunity out and share a little bit about what Zebra's thinking today and about the future.
Sure. And as you were explaining all of that, I mean, I'm thinking of super advanced 3D printers and Star Trek replicators that will radically, completely change the manufacturing logistics. I mean, retail, if you can just print something in your home, you don't need factories in China or Walmarts or any of that sort of stuff. But look, a lot of that's sci-fi. At the moment, we're barely printing out little 3D figurines with any kind of high resolution. So that's all coming down the track, and I'm sure you're thinking what all that means, as is everybody else. My second last question is simply to ask you to share what's the best piece of advice that you've ever received in life and how it's helped you get to where you are today.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Alex. Share the what? I didn't catch it.
Oh, the best piece of advice that you've received in life to help you get where you are today.
Wow, that's an interesting one. As usual, I can never pick one thing as an answer, so you may have to deal with that. So, one I would say is the word persistence, and this one I got from my father. There's a number of quotes out there on the concept of persistence, but persistence has solved and always will solve the problems of the human race. That's a Calvin Coolidge quote or a section of one of his quotes. And he goes on to say that, education can't replace persistence. Inherent smarts can't replace, persistence. Brilliance doesn't replace persistence. It's ultimately the thing that you have to rely on to persevere, to have the passion. So passion and persistence to kind of get to the future state, I think, is something that served me really well. And as I like to say sometimes to my team, there's 1,000 reasons why something won't work. I want to hear I want to hear the 3 reasons why it will, and then go and make it happen. And that's sort of the difference between just wild, unfocused persistence versus really focused, as saying, hey, we thought about all the possibilities and we've eliminated 50,000 chess moves, right? But here's the one chess move that's going to get us to the end game. And that's really a combination of persistence and focus. So I think that's one for sure. And the other one, I guess this is more in a business context, but could be applied to career as well, is the concept that strategy is as much about what you're not doing as it is about what you are doing. And I continue to, no matter how many times I have that beaten into me, have learned the lesson. I learn more about it every day. It's a complex world, not getting less complex. There's more options. There's more ways to deploy capital today than ever. There's more people innovating in places that could be disruptive to your core business. And so really thinking about, hey, what are we going to build? What are we going to partner? What are we going to buy on? And how are we going to make those trade-offs? And what are we not going to do because it's contextual and we're going to outsource it to somebody else that can do it better than us? And what are we going to do? That I think is an area that's become way more important than it was a decade ago. It used to be, you could be a really insular company and build competitive advantage by being really good at something and not sharing. I think the idea that you can innovate today and win a market and have number one market share without co-opetition, without collaborative innovation with other companies, I mean, there's really no examples of it. Anybody that's leading today has somewhat open borders and is sharing and collaborating together to realize the future. So being focused, having that strategy and making the hard decisions of what you're not going to do, and then having the persistence and the passion to go and make it happen, I think are two areas I think about a lot.
Yeah, well, we heard famously at an Apple conference that they have 1,000 no's for every yes. And we heard from Thomas Edison that he didn't fail 10,000 times to make the light bulb. He found 10,000 ways that didn't work. And then I'm sure I read this somewhere because I only just thought of it, but I'm sure I read it somewhere. But, necessity is clearly the mother of invention. Its father must be persistence.
Very good. That's
Yeah,
right.
I mean,
Yes.
I must have read it somewhere. I mean, it could be an original one. I don't know. But I was just, as you were saying, I was thinking, wow, necessity is the mother of invention, but persistence is its father, because you got to be persistent. There's a million ideas. I think it was
Yeah.
Calvin Coolidge or somebody, Goethe, who said, there are all these talented people. I forget the exact quote, but the magic is in doing. And, ideas by themselves are useless unless you take action and bring it to life.
That's right.
So, what is your final message to iTWire viewers and readers, and to your current and future customers and partners?
Well, first, it's thank you. So thank you, Alex, for taking the time out. I think this has been a great dialogue and a great relationship, frankly, that you and I have shared here. So thanks for that. Secondly, thanks to our customers. We don't do all the great things we do without them, and we are fortunate enough to invest almost $500 million a year in R&D, and our customers' success is what funds that R&D budget, so we can innovate even more for them in the future. So thanks to them for that. And the rest of my message is, let's have a great conference. Let's go create the future together. We're on a journey. All these things that we spoke about are transforming before our very eyes. Those that lived before us had to live decades to see the amount of transformation we're going to see just in several years. I think there's another quote out there, Alex, you'll probably appreciate, you may have heard, is, things are moving fast, but they've never moved as slow as they are right now, right? So it's the idea that we're accelerating into the pace of innovation is before us, and it's ours to either seize or squander. So really look forward to the conference, having the conversations with our customers, and taking everything we're learning into the future and helping to make better solutions for them and for the world.
Well, Tom Bianculli, CTO of Zebra Technologies, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. I hope we can talk again. I hope we meet at one of the conferences one day in person. And, it's November the 10th in Australia. I'll have the link to the conference in this video and in the article this video is appearing in. But thank you so much for your time, and I hope to talk to you again.
Excellent, Alex. Great to speak with you, and looking forward to the 10th. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.